An Ancient Fear, written by Ethan Fowler, read by yours truly. I sit uncomfortable and motionless on the hard wooden seat of Bridgewater's courthouse, trying my best not to make eye contact with my father. Covering my ears, I try in vain to block out the enraged townfolk's screams. Guilty! Guilty! One grieving mother yells as her family tries to hold her back. All your fault. All your fault. The little girl next to me repeats as a stream of tears run down from her crystal blue eyes. Order in the court, the judge bellows as he beats his wooden hammer on the desk, the noise of the impact cutting through the voices, leaving only an echo and silence in its wake. Only now I make eye contact with my father, who hasn't stopped staring at me since he was walked in, bound in chains. His charcoal eyes filled with fear, but not from the almost rabid crowd around me, or even the judge who looks down at him with venom etched in his face, but from something unknown to me. You stand before the court of Bridgewater, accused of 7 murders, the judge says in a deep and serious tone. How do you plead? A moment passes as the atmosphere of the room turns ice as my father stares down at me. I plead guilty, he whispers, his sleep-deprived eyes unmoving. Before I continue with your sentencing, I'd like to ask you a question. I'm told that only your victim's blood was found, the judge says as he makes eye contact with everybody in the room before stopping at me. A moment passes as the judge studies my body language before returning his gaze to my frail and broken father. If you tell us where you hid the bodies of our loved ones, I will make sure your death will be quick. The moment the judge offers this deal, my father turns to look at him with shock and surprise, as the crowd screams their objection for mercy. Once again the judge calls for order, and again the crowd obeys with rage-filled silence. You have heard my words, now answer, the judge orders, before looking for my reaction. I watch silently as my father smiles and takes a deep breath as if preparing to scream the locations out with joy. But something catches his gaze, something outside which shatters his resolve. His eyes filled with fear, he tries in vain to retreat further back into his chair as his face turns white. I can't. I want to, believe me, but I mustn't. He stutters as he fights the urge to scream in terror. The judge, following my father's gaze, looks out the window in confusion to see what my father was so scared of. Seeing nothing but a wheat field, he returns his gaze to my father. And why can't you? What are you afraid of? The judge says, looking once more out the window. It's fiddlesticks. He's hunting me. It's why I confessed, as to get shelter from his wrath. If I tell you where I hid the bodies, he will slaughter all of you, including my son, he yells as his voice cracks from the sudden use. Fiddlesticks? The scarecrow, the judge says, confused, looking around the room in disbelief. I see. You're a madman, and so this will be an act of mercy, the judge says, picking up his hammer with a shrug. I sentence you to die by hanging, he continues, tapping his hammer twice as the crowd around me cheers. As my father is taken away by armed men and the crowd leaves, I'm left alone with my thoughts and the feeling of my father's eyes. Hearing the sound of wood hitting wood behind me and the smell of old perfume, I don't move from my seat, only wait for the words I know are coming. Are you ready to go, Boo? My nana says, wooden stick in hand. I only nod before looking to the grey but beautiful woman standing next to me. Yes, Nana, I say, before slowly standing and walking into her arms for a tight hug. As we walk out to the horse and cart, I feel a presence behind me, something I've never felt before. The feeling you get when you notice a mannequin with glass eyes staring back at you with a smile. Feeling threatened, I turn to face the presence, but without knowing what I'm fearing, I begin to slowly walk backwards, not daring to turn my back to the unknown. After almost jumping out of my skin when my back makes contact with the horse's cart, I jump on quickly, hoping the speed of the horse will be faster than whatever now hunts me. As we get to Nan's house, I help her get off the cart. You head inside. I don't want you to get cold, so I'll put the horses away, I say, walking Nana inside with a warm smile. Thank you, dear. I'll put dinner on, she says, before closing the door behind her. After walking the first of the two horses into the stable, I notice a figure standing in the fields, wearing old moth-eaten clothes. What did father say about the scarecrows? I ask myself without thinking, as I tried to recall if the scarecrow was there before. Walking the second horse into the stable, I look to the field and freeze, as I swear it's several feet closer. Slowly approaching the scarecrow to get a better look, I hear a haunting, distorted voice on the wind with the sound of scraping metal. Standing motionless, I listen as the same sentence is repeated over and over again until finally I know the question this creature is trying to master. Can I ask you a question? Sprinting inside, I lock all the doors and windows before grabbing grandfather's shotgun and rushing to explain to Nana what I just witnessed. Before I'm able to speak a word, however, Nana snatches the shotgun from my sweaty hands and pushes me towards my room. Lock the door and hide in your closet, she orders, with a sad and tired look. Knowing my place, I head upstairs. But before turning into my room, I look back at Nana and notice that her expression has changed into one of acceptance. Hiding in my closet, I hear only muffled voices. Is Nana talking to that thing? I say, confused. The gunshots ring out, making me jump and hit my head on the roof of the closet. As the echoes fade, I'm left in silence, with a stinging spot where my head hit the roof of the closet as it begins to bleed. Listening carefully, I hear the front door open and close. Is the scarecrow in the house? I whisper as my heart bashes against my chest, as if trying to get out. Heavy feet hit each step of the staircase. It won't get me without a fight, I say, grabbing one of Nana's spare walking sticks and taking several deep breaths. As the footsteps stop at my bedroom door, I hear a muffled voice. It's safe to come out now, Boo. I've got them to leave, a tired voice says between gasps of breath. Not trusting the voice, I remain silent and still as I listen to the heavy wheezing. With an annoyed sigh, the door is unlocked, and I hear my bed springs squeak. Come on, Boo. I know you're scared, but the scarecrow doesn't have a key to this room, Nana says in a convincing tone. Knowing that if she was indeed a scarecrow, she would have simply kicked down the door, I reluctantly step from the closet to see Nana sitting on my bed. I know I wasn't in the courthouse today, but I was listening, and I know what was said, Nana says in a regretful tone. Do you believe what they said? That my father killed all those people? I asked, walking over and taking my place next to her. Yes, dear, sadly I do. The question is, will you join me at the gallows, or will you stay home? She asks in a more serious tone. I'm really scared of the scarecrows, Nana, but other than you, he is my only living family since the plague, so I think it would be wrong not to be with him at the end, I say, as a tear makes its way down my cheek. I understand, and I'm proud of you for putting family first, she says, giving me a hug before leaving my room. After having stew for dinner, Nana stays up with me until I fall asleep, just like she did before I was taken away by my father. Waking up, I take a deep breath and put on the clothes I would if I was going to church. After having breakfast with Nana, we reluctantly go to where the gallows were built. Always looking out for Nana, I keep an eye out for any scarecrows as we journey there by horse and cart, but to my surprise, I see nothing but empty fields. Turning the corner, however, my heart all but stops as we see that 7 scarecrows have been moved behind the gallows, as if waiting for the execution to begin. Thinking this a cruel joke by someone in the crowd, I asked around if they knew who moved them, but found that not even the builders knew, as they were there before even them. Sitting on one of Nana's handmade blankets, we wait patiently for my father to arrive in his iron cage and dressed in rags. As we wait, Nana notices children from my school playing sword fights with sticks nearby and looks at me with a warm smile. Why don't you join them in their little game? Maybe you'll make a few friends, Nana says, trying to cheer me up. I'm okay, Nana. I rather the company of animals, I say, before returning my gaze to the ground. The moment my father's cage appears from around the corner, the screams and throwing of rotten fruit begin as the town makes the most of the day. As my father is dragged up the gallows stairs and the rope put around his neck, his eyes find me in the crowd, and he smiles as tears begin to build. We all know why we're here and what must be done, so I won't draw this out, the town executioner says, making sure all can hear him. You have confessed to murdering at least 7 people, and now it is your turn, he continues sadly, as the crowd cheers. Do you have any last words? The executioner says, placing a hand on the lever. At this moment, the crowd falls silent as everyone listens intently to what he has to say for himself. Burn the scarecrows and my body, my father says, not breaking eye contact with me before suddenly being dropped through the trap door. With a snap, my father was dead, and my life shattered along with my heart as Nana begins to weep. Time seemed to stop at that moment, and before we knew it, we were at my father's funeral, with nobody but the gravedigger and the priest by our side. Returning home in silence, I stop only to help Nana put the horses away, before retreating into my room to hide and cry. Waking up with a heavy heart and dried tears down my cheek, I reluctantly prepare for school. How did you sleep, dear? Nana says with a warm smile and bags under her eyes as she places a plate of damper before me on the table. It was a rough night, but it should be enough to get me through the day. And how are you? You look as tired as I feel, I say with a smile. Like you, I had nightmares, she says, sitting down and rubbing her eyes. Why did you keep knocking on my door? Why were you always asking if I was okay? I say, before taking another bite of damper. Why? Because you were screaming in your sleep, my dear, and I was worried, she says with a loving smile. I wasn't the one screaming. You were, I laugh, as I spread some more jam on my breakfast. A moment passes, and we both slow our eating as we come to the realization of where the screaming must have come from. Sharing a look of terror, we both jump from our seats, grabbing grandfather's shotgun as we rush out the door as if the house was on fire. You must leave this place, as you are of your father's blood, Nana yells as she wraps my school bag around me and pushes me towards the stable. We don't have time to put the horses in the cart, so you must ride bareback, she continues, as she throws me over the nearest horse as the smell of rotten flesh fills our noses. Ride to the blacksmith Ted in the heart of the town. He'll take care of you and keep you safe, she says as she begins to fight for breath. Wait, what about you? I yell as I grab her hand before she can take it away. They will come here first, so I must meet them, she says as tears pour from her eyes. You don't have to do this. We have 2 horses, I yell as I fight to hold her hand. I promised your mother I'd keep you safe, and if staying behind to give you time to flee is what I need to do to keep that promise, then so be it, she says, barely keeping it together. Goodbye, my dear. I will always love you like only a mother can, Nana sobs, before slapping the rear of the horse and turning to face the tall figures now stepping from the field. Hearing gunshots, I try with all my strength to turn the horse around, but being so small and the horse being so scared, it refused to obey. Sobbing and exhausted, I entered town on a terrified horse. Nana gone. Need blacksmith, I cried to the crowd, quickly beginning to gather around me. As I struggled to keep the startled horse under control, a large muscly man pushes his way through the crowd. Without hesitation, he takes his belt off and wraps it around the horse's neck to regain control. "Come, boy," the bearded man growls as he tells the horse to walk on. After putting the horse in the stable, he pulls me off its back and carries me underarm before placing me on a wooden stool next to the forge. The stone workshop seemed almost alien to me, as my nose is filled with coal dust. As my tear-filled eyes scan the strange metal tools hanging on the wall, I'm suddenly met by the blacksmith's steel gaze. "Speak, boy. Tell me why you came here in such a state," he orders as he beats a white-hot piece of metal on an anvil with a large, well-used hammer. "Fiddlesticks came to get me, and Nana sacrificed herself to give me time to escape," I say, whimpering away. At this news, the blacksmith stops mid-hammer strike to look at me. "I see," he says, taking a deep breath as if dumping a large weight from his shoulders. "I can finally repay your grandmother's kindness," he continues with a smile as the clock behind us begins to toll. "Come, boy, it's time to go," the blacksmith says, throwing me over his shoulder as if I weighed nothing, and walked me back into the stables. As we reach his farmhouse, he points to the barn across from it. "On the top floor is a chest. There is bed sheets there," he says before stepping off the cart and beginning to unstrap the horse. Not seeing any scarecrows coming here, I reluctantly nod and quickly make my way to the barn. Stepping inside and closing the door plunges me into almost complete darkness, so after a long-tired sigh, I'm forced to open the doors wide as to let in the little sun that still remains. Feeling exposed and vulnerable, I throw myself up the ladder and find the wooden chest among crates and barrels of supplies. Lifting the squeaky lid open, I find a blanket covering a hunting knife. Taking them both, I turn to descend the ladder once more. Before my foot can make contact with the first step, however, I freeze as I'm suddenly hit with the smell of decay wafting from below. Carefully, I get on my stomach and peek over the side of the upper floor, my heart beating hard against my chest. As the abomination limps in, I notice the gunshots covering its lanky frame, weeping black rotten blood. The holes look deep, as I can clearly see the metal skeleton and straw under the moth-eaten clothes. I watch in fascination as the almost rabid creature begins digging through old bales of hay in an attempt to fill the holes. With no windows in the barn, I'm forced to continue hiding and wait for the scarecrow to leave, but before I can get comfortable, I'm found out. As the scarecrow demolishes another bale, a rat escapes the carnage and climbs the post closest to me, guiding the scarecrow's eyes to mine. Letting out an ear-bursting laughter of bloodlust, the scarecrow begins to climb, sharp metal claws digging into the wooden support beams. The moment its head appears over the second floor, I draw my knife and slash its eyes, making it fall backwards, screaming in rage. Jumping past to land on the ruined straw bale, I hear the scarecrow speak in the distorted voice of a little girl. "All your fault! All your fault!" as it holds its face in vice-like claws. As I run to the house, Ted meets me halfway, still holding an unfinished sword, still red hot from the forge. "Where is it, boy?" he bellows. "It's in the barn. I've blinded it," I shout back, running behind him, my sweaty hands still wrapped tightly around the knife. Hearing our voice, the scarecrow rushes out, slashing in all directions in an attempt to slice us to pieces. Picking his moment, Ted rushes forward and begins stabbing, only to dodge away so the scarecrow can't counter with its claws. Each stab leaving smoking holes until finally bursting into flames. We both stagger back, holding our noses as they're insulted by the smell of burning flesh. As the twisted monster dies, I take a deep breath, but before my heart could rest, it freezes as the cries of the scarecrow burning are suddenly joined by several more. "Get inside now," Ted bellows as he throws me over his shoulder and begins sprinting towards the house's storm cellar. slamming the steel door behind us and barring it with the now cooled sword. We jump back as the door's hinges are pushed to its limits, shaking violently as we watch in horror as the steel door is dented multiple times as the monsters throw themselves against it. The muffled screaming is nothing less than blood-curdling as some rampage through the house above us as they try to find another way in. Holding me tight in his strong arms, we both hide in the shadows. Fear not, boy. If they can't get through that door, they can't get us, as I didn't make another way, Ted says in a reassuring voice. After that sentence, all went quiet, as if they heard I understood the words. After a moment of listening intently, we finally hear the heavy footsteps again, but they were slower, and each step was slightly fainter than the last. Refusing to leave the safety of the cellar, we hide in the glow of the forge's hot coals, always keeping an eye out and jumping at the slightest noise. As the sun shines through the floorboards above us, Ted leaves my side and walks to take an old wooden box from the shelf above the forge. Turning towards me, I see sadness in his eyes. Do you know why I didn't hesitate to let you into my home? He asks, not looking up from the small box. You said you owed Nana kindness, I say, standing to my feet and stepping into the light. I did. She saved me from myself after my son was taken, Ted says with a slight smile as his eyes slowly fills with tears. Resisting the urge to cry, he reluctantly lifts the lid and takes out a silver locket. When I got married and my son was born, I forged my family each a locket so we would never be apart, he says, showing an identical locket hanging around his neck. If you are to be a part of my family, you will need one of your own, he continues, returning the silver locket to its box and handing it to me. Take good care of it, as it was my wife's, he says sadly, as he puts the chain over my head. Boy, if we're to live here, we'll need food and water in case we are put under siege by those creatures. We'll also need weapons in case they find their way in, he says before placing a hand on my shoulder. I must stay here as to forge those weapons, and you must ride into town to buy dried food and jugs of water, he says, handing me 2 bags and a pouch of gold. Noticing how troubled he is to ask me of this, I give him a smile and a nod. I'll ride there and back as quickly as I can so I can help you at the forge, I say before turning to leave. Taking a deep breath, I nervously unbar the door, and after checking that the coast was clear, I sprint to the stables. Putting the cart on the closest horse, I ride back into town as fast as 1 horsepower can provide. Reaching the town safely, I leave the exhausted horse with a bucket of water and continue into the market. As I shop for dried fruit, meat, and jugs of lemon water, I listen to the local gossip. They haven't come back to the field. It's been 3 days. A worried mother sobs. There were 3 dead hunters in total, 1 locked outside of the cabin, and 2 inside near a broken, half-boarded up window. I don't know what killed those hunters, but it had claws, says the town guard. She was found still holding her husband's shotgun and surrounded by no less than 3 shot-up scarecrows, laughs the local drunk. So between Nana and us, we have killed 4 of the 7, I whispered to myself, already missing my Nana's hugs. Buying all the food and water I can, I return to the cart and head towards the exit. As I get to the town gate, I'm stopped by the guard, who, after checking my cart, looks at me with searching eyes. Do you or your family have a flare gun? The guard growls. After shaking my head in confusion, he sighs and retrieves a large, strange-looking gun from the guard tower. People have been found brutally killed lately, so the guard have been ordered to hand out these flare guns to all the families not living in the safety of these walls. Hopefully, this saves lives, he says, letting out a long sigh before continuing. When you're in danger, point to the sky and pull the trigger, but know that you only have 1 shot, so use it wisely, he says, giving me a nod to say I could leave. Riding the same way I came, at top speed, I watch in fear as the sun begins to set behind the tall trees of the forest. With the full moon being my last remaining light source, I quickly realized I am no longer alone, as the light above me was being blocked. Looking up, the first thing I see is a blood-stained smile, as the rotten figure swings above me in the trees. Its smile only gets wider as it notices me looking up at it, and before I'm able to let out a scream, the scarecrow drops from above, knocking me into the back of the cart as it lets out a burst of blood-curdling laughter. Climbing to my feet, I'm forced into a wrestling match as we both struggle to keep our balance on the bouncing cart. The scarecrow quickly begins to win as it uses its sharp metal claws, eagerness to kill, to gain the advantage. As I struggle to defend myself, I manage to tear the threadbare clothes off its rusted frame. Instantly, I notice that the scarecrow is on the defensive as it struggles to keep its straw from blowing away. Before I'm able to see what lies beneath, however, the horse hits a pothole in the road, forcing me to hold on for dear life and bouncing the scarecrow off. The next sound was almost stomach-churning as the scarecrow is violently crushed under the cart's heavy wheels. With only a few scratches, I return to the reins, shaken but driven to get to Ted, who I pray managed to get to the storm cellar in time. As I approach Ted's house, however, my heart rate once again skyrockets as I see thick smoke slowly drifting through the trees, blocking out the little remaining light. The forest now filled with the distorted voices of the victims of the bloodthirsty scarecrows and the roar of the well-fed flames. As I turn into Ted's driveway, I'm met by the inferno that was once our house, and the two remaining scarecrows beating on the cellar door. The moment I'm noticed by the scarecrows, they abandon Ted for an easier target.
Guilty! Guilty!
The smallest scarecrow screams as I take out the flare gun and take aim with shaky hands. I won't let you lay a hand on my boo, fiddlesticks taunts in my nana's voice. The moment I hear these words, I'm overcome by rage, and I open fire, hitting the closest scarecrow in the mouth as it tries to speak again. The forest is once again filled with the sound of scarecrows' screams, but instead of the dead, it's the scarecrows itself, as it tries in vain to quench the flames. Not stopping to enjoy the bonfire, I drop the now spent flare gun and sprint towards the safety of the storm cellar. Unfortunately, Fiddlesticks didn't stop to enjoy marshmallows either, and quickly block my path with a smile. Realizing I'm defenseless, his smile widens as he slowly begins to walk towards me, with his claws ready to taste fresh blood. Fear taking control, I'm forced into a sprint to the barn, with Fiddlesticks close behind me, laughing like a demon. Beating him to the barn door, I slam it in his face to shut him up and give me time to hide.
Open the door! Let me in!
Fiddlesticks screams as he forces himself in. Finding an axe, I wait in ambush as he begins to search for me.
I'll help you follow my voice,
he says as he stumbles past my hiding spot. Knowing that it's only a matter of time until he finds me, I take a deep breath and jump from the shadows to hack off one of his arms. Caught off guard, Fiddlesticks lets out an ear-piercing scream of pain and rage as he tries to find his missing limb. The moment the severed arm hits the hay-covered floor, I'm forced on the defensive as I try to put as many objects between me and the rotting monster as possible. Having a messy barn has its benefits, as Fiddlesticks stumbles and trips as he tries to close the distance. Quickly I realize there's also a drawback to fighting in here, as the large blood-encrusted scarecrow can block the only entrance as it cuts everything in its path to ribbons. Bales of hay, bags of coal, and rotting support beams put up little resistance to Fiddlestick's formidable claws. I'm suddenly forced not only to fight off Fiddlesticks, but made to avoid falling roof boards and things stored in the attic. With the screaming of nails being pulled from wood, I make a snap decision and dodge Fiddlestick's next swing, dashing between his legs as I hear another support beam getting destroyed. After hearing Fiddle's rage-filled screams suddenly silenced by the barn's roof, I waste no time in freeing Ted from the smoke-filled storm cellar. Being only sweaty and a little smoked, I explain that we're safe and what happened to all the other scarecrows. With both of us wanting to know what these scarecrows were under their straw, we both nervously approach the barn. With a heavy sigh of relief, I find the crushed and twisted body of the scarecrow unmoving. Slowly I remove the blood-stained straw from his chest, only to find a decaying body of a small child. If it was any other time, I would have jumped back with a shocked scream, but what the child was wearing froze me to the spot. I say nothing, only pull the small silver locket from the kid's neck and hold it up as to get a better look. A moment passes as we both stare in disbelief. But this doesn't make sense, I mumble as I look to Ted for answers. I have your wife's, and you said your son was dead, I say, taking out the same locket from around my neck. Did you make one for someone else? I say as I watch Ted touch his own. No, boy, Ted says as tears stream from his eyes. I said my son was taken.